What if you could own a tiny piece of a skyscraper, or a sports team, or maybe even a slice of your favorite artist's next album? This isn't science fiction anymore. We are talking about tokenizing real-world assets. And today, we're going to break down a new piece of tech that wants to be the operating system for this entire revolution. Let's get into it. Okay, so before we dive into the nuts and bolts, let's just soak in the big idea here. This is about completely changing what it means to own something. It's about making ownership way more accessible and, well, way more dynamic than it's ever been. And this quote, wow, it really paints the picture, doesn't it? A world where value just flows. I mean, imagine getting rental income from a building paid out to you and hundreds of other owners, not every month, but every single second. That's the core idea here, turning these static, kind of boring assets into living, breathing investments. So, what are we actually talking about? It's called real-world asset tokenization, or RWA for short. And honestly, it's a simple idea. You're just taking the ownership rights to something in the real world, like a building, a piece of art, or even company stock, and you're representing those rights as a digital token that lives on a blockchain. That's it. Now, all of this sounds pretty incredible, right? I mean, a seamless world where you can own a piece of anything. But if the potential is so massive, we have to ask the obvious question. Yeah, exactly. Why isn't this already happening everywhere? Well, because turning this amazing vision into our day-to-day reality means we have to get over some pretty significant real-world hurdles first. And these challenges really boil down to three main things. First, you've got all these fragmented systems. It's like everyone is building their own little island, and none of them talk to each other. That leads to the second problem, trapped liquidity, where your assets just can't be traded easily. And kind of looming over all of it is the massive headache of compliance and regulatory risk. And this contrast right here is the heart of the problem. On one side, you have the old way, this messy patchwork of expensive, custom-built silos where assets just get stuck. The vision is for a single, unified marketplace, a global standard that lets assets and value move around as freely as you send an email. All right, so to solve problems this big, you need a really foundational solution. And this is where the technology we're looking at today, called TX, enters the picture. Texas's mission is specifically designed to attack those three core challenges head-on. The whole goal is to create one coherent ecosystem that unifies how assets get created in the first place, makes sure they meet all the rules, and then allows them to be traded easily. If you remember just one thing from all this, let it be this analogy. Think of TX as an operating system. It's just like iOS on your iPhone or Android on your phone. That OS lets thousands of different apps all run on the same standard. Well, TX is trying to do the exact same thing, but for thousands of different tokenized assets. Okay, so how does an operating system for assets actually work? Well, the real magic is baked into the tokens themselves. Let's take a look at how they're built. Here's the key, the real game changer. What if the rules for how an asset can be bought, sold, and owned were baked directly into the digital token itself? And that's what we call a smart token. These things aren't just passive digital receipts of ownership. Nope, they're programmable assets. They have their own logic built right in that can enforce rules automatically without needing some expensive middleman to check everything. And when you can program the asset itself, you unlock three huge benefits. It allows the people who create the asset to enforce compliance rules automatically. It provides security features to protect investors, and it gives the creator control over its entire lifecycle. So let's look at a few real examples. Whitelisting basically lets an issuer create a VIP list, making sure only pre-approved verified investors can even hold the token. Freezing lets an admin hit a pause button on all transfers if there's a security breach or some other issue. And clawback provides a way to get assets back if, say, a court orders it. These aren't just cool features, these are the kinds of tools that regulated markets absolutely demand. Okay, this technology is fascinating, for sure, but why are we talking about it right now? Well, it's because the market is hitting a really critical tipping point. Let's talk about scale for a second. Get ready for this number. Projections estimate that the market for tokenized assets could be worth more than $30 trillion by 2034. We're not talking about a small niche here, that's a fundamental rewiring of global capital markets. And look, this isn't some far-off prediction. This growth is already happening. As we speak, there are over $355 billion of real-world assets on-chain today. A few years ago, that number was just in the billions. The trend is clearly rocketing towards the trillions. So what's lighting the fire here? Well, it's really a perfect storm of three big things. First, the regulatory environment in the US is becoming a lot more constructive, which cuts down on uncertainty. Second, you have the biggest financial players in the world. We're talking BlackRock, UBS, actively moving into this space. And third, the technology itself is finally mature enough to handle all of this.
Which brings us right back to that grand vision. When ownership becomes this fluid and this accessible, the whole line between being a customer of a business and an owner of that business, it starts to get blurry. Participation in the economy just becomes so much more direct.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. In a world where pretty much anything can be an investable asset, where value flows freely, and where ownership is for everyone, what would you want to own a piece of?